All right, and we back on the forecast. So I'm sure by now that everybody is aware that there is a huge drug epidemic going on inside of the United States of America right now. And this is not the first drug epidemic in America. The demographics are a little different, but right now it's at the point where you see it on the news all the time to where even the president had to address it. Now, based off what we've seen from America in the past, what we've seen from this president in the past and his attorney general, I'm sure the president gave a real tough speech on the drug epidemic, and they came out about how they were going to crack down on drugs and go harder on the war on drugs now that it's a huge epidemic going on in America. So let's see what the president had to say about it.
As you all know from personal experience, families, communities, and citizens across our country are currently dealing with the worst drug crisis in American history, and even, if you really think about it, world history. This is all throughout the world. The fact is, this is a worldwide problem. This crisis of drug use, addiction, and overdose deaths in many years, it's just been so long in the making. Addressing it will require all of our effort, and it will require us to confront the crisis in all of its very real complexity. Last year, we lost at least 64,000 Americans to overdoses. That's 175 lost American lives per day. That's 7 lost lives per hour in our country. Drug overdoses are now the leading cause of unintentional death in the United States by far. More people are dying from drug overdoses today than from gun homicides and motor vehicles combined. Think of it. Motor vehicle crashes, gun homicides, more people by far from drug overdoses. These overdoses are driven by a massive increase in addiction to prescription painkillers, heroin, and other opioids. Last year, almost 1 million Americans used heroin, and more than 11 million abused prescription opioids. The United States is by far the largest consumer of these drugs, using more opioid pills per person than any other country by far in the world. Opioid overdose deaths have quadrupled since 1999 and now account for the majority of fatal drug overdoses. Who would have thought? Nope. In West Virginia, a truly great state, great people, there is a hospital nursery where 1 in every 5 babies spends its first days in agony. Because these precious babies were exposed to opioids or other drugs in the womb, they endure nausea, pain, anxiety, sleeplessness, and troubling eating, just the same as adults undergoing detox. Some of these children will likely lose one or both of their parents to drug addiction and overdose. Beyond the shocking death toll, the terrible measure of the opioid crisis includes the families ripped apart and, for many communities, a generation of lost potential and opportunity. This epidemic is a national health emergency. Unlike many of us, we've seen, and what we've seen in our lifetimes, nobody has seen anything like what's going on now. I am urging all Americans to help fight this opioid epidemic and the broader issue of drug addiction by participating in the National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day this Saturday. When you can safely turn in these dangerous and horrible drugs for disposal, that will be a wonderful, wonderful period of time for you. All of these actions are important parts of my administration's larger effort to confront the drug addiction crisis in America and confront it head on, straight on, strong. We're going to do it. We're going to do it.
So wait a minute. Now that it's a opioid, heroin, meth problem, which is mostly a problem in the white community. I know he said there's a problem all across the world, but it's mostly a problem in the white communities. Now, this man just said heroin overdoses account for more deaths than gun violence and car accidents put together. And that in West Virginia, every 1 out of 5 children is born addicted to drugs. It makes you wonder why, when they bring Chicago up, they don't bring West Virginia up. Instead of them cracking down and getting these super predators off the streets and getting these drug addicts off the streets and throwing them in jail, now it's time for us to come together as America to help these drug addicts. Now it's time to create events like National Drug Take Back Day.
Saturday is National Drug Take Back Day. Law enforcement agencies are going to give everybody an opportunity to dispose safely of medications you don't need anymore, those out-of-date pills. The event was started, this was back in 2010 when they got it going. The Drug Enforcement Agency wanted a way to allow people to get rid of the unused, unwanted, expired prescriptions without, flushing them down the toilet or put them in a landfill, or worse, keeping them around where they could be stolen. There's going to be 13 locations in 7 counties in Northeast Tennessee this weekend where you can drop off the medications, no questions asked.
We know that people get started on medications by what they find in the drug cabinet. So a good preventive tool is to get anything that you're not using or that has expired out of the cabinet and take it back to one of these locations.
You can find a list of the locations on the website takebackday.gov.
Now that it's a problem in their communities, they're saying, well, look, you can bring back the drugs and it won't be no questions asked. We won't even bother you. Now, we know that this isn't the first drug epidemic in America that America has seen. We remember the response that the crack era got. They was not being sent to hospitals. They was being sent to jails. I don't remember them having events saying, well, if you turn in your crack, then it won't be no questions asked. Just turn it in and you'll be okay. We'll take you to the hospital if you want treatments. I don't remember any of that. Right now, we have people who are felons just because of marijuana. In America, there are states where marijuana is legal and people can have dispensaries. But if I get caught with a certain amount of weed, whether I smoke it or not, that's a felony charge. And I'm doing at least a year or 2. But here you have all across Virginia, if you're addicted to heroin and opioids and meth, you can turn your drugs in and there's no questions asked. A grand jury just decided that was a good enough reason not to press charges on a police officer for shooting Luke Stewart. The fact that he had marijuana and he had cocaine in his system was a good enough reason to shoot him. And the irony is, this same president and his Attorney General Jeff Sessions reversed one thing that President Obama did do that benefited the black community. President Obama did what he could to make the drug policies more fair. He didn't make it exactly fair, but for instance, he made the sentencing gap between crack and cocaine from 100-1 to 18-1. He pardoned many people being overcharged for drugs. And the president and his people, one of the first things they did was reverse that law and make these drug sentences more harsher, but only on a certain group of people. And America has always used drugs as a way to criminalize a certain group of people. For them, it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. While we keep crying and begging and asking for justice, what we have to understand is that them criminalizing us not only gives them a way to justify these unjustifiable murders, it also allows them to lock up people that they don't murder. Now they can make billions of dollars off the prison industrial complex. The 13th Amendment says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for a crime. So going by their law and their constitution, if they can find a way to criminalize you, you're still a slave and they can do whatever they want to you and it's okay. It's completely justified. That's why you got these NFL owners out here calling the football players inmates.
Texans owner Bob McNair has apologized for some questionable comments he made at the recent NFL owners meeting. According to ESPN, McNair told NFL owners and executives when it comes to player protests, they need to avoid having, quote, the inmates running the prison. McNair released a statement Friday to apologize, saying, quote, I regret that I used that expression. I never meant to offend anyone, and I was not referring to our players. I used a figure of speech that was never intended to be taken literally. I would never characterize our players or our league that way, and I apologize to anyone who was offended by it. After McNair made the comments in the meeting, NFL executive Troy Vincent stood up and said he was offended by the comments, saying he'd been called many things during his playing years, but never felt like an inmate.
And then we act all surprised and get offended when these people show their true colors. Of course they feel this way. If the last 400 years haven't shown you their true colors, I don't know what will. And we have to face the fact that they learned how to put tribalism to the side. They learn how to put aside their differences to come in and take your land and all of its natural resources and take the people and force them to work for them to build them wealth. But we can't get past our tribalism and the simple things that divide us. Our families aren't enough, our children aren't enough to put aside those differences to come together. White men and white women have their own problem between the sexes. But at the end of the day, they learn how to put it all aside for the greater good of their people. The presidential election was the poll. Look at who white women voted for, despite what they said. Sure, white people identify with their nationality. They'll claim they're French. They'll claim they're Italian. They'll claim they're Irish. But at the end of the day, they'll put aside that nationality for the greater good of white people. We as American black people have a hard time putting aside our differences, let alone through black people across the planet. At the end of the day, they protect their own. And until we can learn how to put aside our tribalism and protect our own, then we're going to be subject to their laws, their punishment, and to their justice. There's no other way around it. Either we come together and we build a nation, or we hope in another 200, 300 years, they'll change their ways and they'll start being nice to us. It is up to us to be about it. Nobody is going to change things for us if we don't change things for ourselves.
The owner of the Houston Texans is apologizing after his comments about the ongoing protests of NFL players during the national anthem. During a meeting between players and owners last week, Bob McNair said if the league didn't stop the protests, it would be like, quote, inmates running the prison.
The issue came up when our Dana Jacobson sat down to discuss the Atlanta Falcons' new stadium and community redevelopment plan with owner Arthur Blank for a future story on CBS This Morning.
I was there when Bob made that comment. Now, you know, in defense of Bob is one of the brightest, fair-minded, most concerned owners in the NFL.
Atlanta Falcons owner Arthur Blank has called for unity in the face of player protests during the national anthem. On Friday, Blank said Texans owner Bob McNair realized he made a poor choice of words in saying the inmates were running the prison.
Given the issues and all the sensitivities around him, you know, I think others heard it differently in the room and responded that way. But Bob, you know, like most people that are thoughtful and sensitive and caring, which he is, he recognized poor choice of words in that context. Let me not defend it.
Blank says McNair immediately tried to smooth things over with NFL Vice President and former player Troy Vincent. After ESPN first reported McNair's comments, he issued a written apology, reading in part, "I used a figure of speech that was never intended to be taken literally. I would never characterize our players or our league that way." Despite the apology, some NFL players reacted harshly to McNair's comments. At least 10 Texans considered a walkout from practice in protest.
This is the view of player-owner relationship. This is how you view us. This is, you get out of line, you're an inmate.
The anthem protest started last year when then San Francisco quarterback Colin Kaepernick refused to stand. They were brought back into the national discussion last month when President Trump said players who don't stand should be fired. Blank says the president's comments did not help an already sensitive situation.
Some, kerosene thrown on the fire from a white building, and you end up, with players, really responding to that in a very negative way.
Blank added he understands fans' anger towards players, but he doesn't think the league should mandate players stand for the national anthem. For CBS This Morning Saturday, Dana Jacobson, Atlanta.
It is such a sensitive situation.
Yeah, and it has really exposed the tensions between players and owners in a way that I think most people were unaware of, perhaps.
All right, so Saturday was National Drug Prescription Take-Back Day. People dropped off old and unused prescriptions at the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office in Fort Pierce. Take-Back Day actually comes just 2 days after President Trump announced a series of steps that are aimed at fighting opioid abuse, which he declared a public health emergency. The event is an organized attempt to let people know they can safely turn in expired, unused, or unwanted prescription drugs with no questions asked.
This is something that's run by DEA, and we do it once every quarter. That allows people to bring in their unused or expired medications for destruction. We're taking back everything from your unused prescription medications to unused or expired over-the-counter medications as well.
It was the 14th Take-Back Day in 7 years' time.
Reducing the risk of opioid addiction and helping the environment, all without having to get out of your car.
We get the drugs that need to be taken out of the home and into a safe location to be properly disposed of.
National Drug Take-Back Day events held at police departments across the state and country. WMTW spent the morning in South Portland.
All in all, it's been a perfect day.
Hundreds of people cleaning out their cabinets, getting rid of their unwanted, unused, and often expired medications.
We have a healthy competition to see who gets the oldest medication. Currently, we stand at 1958.
Many families stopping by the furniture superstore to drop theirs off. Others visiting the South Portland Police Department, collecting drop-offs curbside.
It was very easy. I just drove through and handed the gentleman they were actually my dog's drugs.
In the basement of the police station, a group of volunteers separating medications from packaging, the bottles recycled and pills boxed up for incineration.
Burning them is not environmentally harmful like putting it in the flush would be.
This year's Fall Drug Take-Back, another success in the fight against the opioid epidemic.
New at 10, a security guard chases down a pregnant woman spied on camera stealing a snowplow.
I walked to her. I told her, "What's wrong? Why are you taking the truck?"
Well, the woman, who police say was high on drugs, took the truck from the Islamic Center.
Corrine Zell is live on Milwaukee's South Side, and Corrine has an exclusive interview with the man who caught her. Corrine.
The truck was parked here in the back of the lot. Security thinks the thief came from this field. She likely got dropped off in the neighborhood and climbed a fence to get here. The woman takes her time getting situated in the truck. Surveillance video shows her driving through the busy Islamic Center parking lot. The security guard notices someone leaving in the snowplow. Turns out it's a stranger.
I drove behind her. Then I took the side. I told her stop. She turned to hit my car.
Safian Quran is in the front car. He and another guard chased the driver through neighborhoods, trying to get her to pull over.
When we reached the lights, I drove and stopped in front of the car, and she stopped.
He says they blocked the plow from the front and back.
I walked to her. I told her, "What's wrong? Why are you taking the truck?" She said, "Oh, someone give me the key and the controller for the snowblower, and I don't know where he went to."
The search warrant says the pregnant woman behind the wheel told police she took cocaine and heroin 2 hours before she stole the truck. Quran says this could have been avoided if the woman would have come to the Islamic Center for help.
And even this lady, if she came here asking for something, absolutely, they're going to help her. They're not going to let her go.
Police don't believe the crooks targeted the Islamic Center.
Drop the gun now! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! We're doing a movie.
Excuse me?
Step back. Step back. Step back. We're doing a movie. Step back. Step back.
Step back now. Get down on the ground.
Stepping back.
Get down on the ground.
Hey, you guys better get out here, man. No.
Hey, stay inside. Stay inside. Stay inside.
We're filming a movie. I ain't lying to you. You guys know me.
Hold on real quick. Yeah, go around.